Agamemnon was one of the most powerful kings of the ancient world, a man who survived 10 years of war, countless battles, and the fall of Troy itself. But his death did not come on a battlefield. It came inside his own palace. After a decade away, Agamemnon finally returned home to Mycenae. The city welcomed him as a hero. There were celebrations, sacrifices, and songs of victory. To everyone watching, the war was over. What no one saw was that another war was waiting for him inside his own walls. That night, Agamemnon entered his palace believing he was safe. His guards stayed outside. His weapons were set aside. He trusted the people inside, especially his wife, Queen Clytemnestra. She greeted him calmly, no anger, no tears, only silence. She led him to a prepared bath, offering him rest after years of bloodshed. This was not unusual. Kings bathed after war. It was a ritual of cleansing. But this bath was different. The room was isolated, the doors were closed. There were no witnesses. What happened next was fast and brutal. Agamemnon was attacked while he was defenseless, trapped, unable to fight back. Ancient sources describe a violent struggle, ending with the king bleeding to death inside the place meant for peace and recovery. By the time anyone realized something was wrong, Agamemnon was already dead. The ruler of Mycenae had been murdered, and the killer was not an enemy soldier. It was his own wife. To understand this murder, we have to go back years before the crime, before Troy, before the war, before the blood in the bath. Agamemnon committed a crime long before he was killed. According to ancient records, the Greek fleet was trapped by the winds. They could not sail to Troy. The priests claimed the gods were angry, and they demanded a sacrifice. Agamemnon agreed. The victim was his own daughter, Iphigenia. He ordered her brought to him under false pretenses. She believed she was going to be married. Instead, she was taken to an altar and killed so the war could begin. Clytemnestra never witnessed the act, but she lived with its consequences. Her child was gone. The king left for war, and justice was never served. For 10 years, Clytemnestra remained in Mycenae, alone, powerless, forced to rule in the shadow of a man who sacrificed their daughter and walked away. Grief slowly turned into anger. Anger turned into hatred, and hatred turned into intent. This was not a sudden decision. This was not an emotional breakdown. It was a motive formed over a decade. Every day Agamemnon was alive, he was also guilty. In her eyes, he was not a hero of Troy. He was a murderer who had never paid for his crime. By the time Agamemnon returned home, Clytemnestra no longer saw him as her husband. She saw him as the man who killed her child. And in true crime, history, motive is everything. This murder did not happen by chance. It was planned. While Agamemnon was away fighting in Troy, Clytemnestra had time. 10 long years to think, to calculate, and to wait. In true crime cases, time often turns anger into strategy. She took control of the palace. She learned its routines. She knew who could be trusted and who could be removed from the king's inner circle. By the time Agamemnon returned, the palace was no longer his. It was hers. Clytemnestra also knew one important truth. She could never overpower Agamemnon in a fair fight. He was a warrior, a survivor. If she wanted him dead, she needed him vulnerable. So she chose timing over force. She chose the moment when he would feel safest. Publicly, she played the role of the loyal wife. There were no visible signs of resentment, no accusations, no confrontation. This was deliberate. Suspicion would ruin everything. The bath was the key. In ancient times, bathing after war symbolized purification. It was a moment when a soldier laid down his weapons and trusted his home. Clytemnestra understood this perfectly. She ordered the room prepared in advance. The space was closed off, isolated, silent. No guards, no witnesses, no escape. By the time Agamemnon entered the bath, the plan was already complete. This was not a spontaneous act of rage. This was a calculated execution. And once the door closed, Agamemnon's fate was sealed. The room was quiet. The doors were closed. The guards were outside. Agamemnon believed the danger was finally over. He stepped into the bath unarmed, exhausted from war and travel. In that moment, he was no longer a king. He was just a man who trusted his home. That was the moment Clytemnestra had been waiting for. Ancient accounts describe the attack as sudden and merciless. Agamemnon was trapped inside the bath, his movements restricted, his body exposed. Some sources say a heavy cloth was thrown over him, preventing him from standing or defending himself. Others describe a blade or an axe used at close range. What remains consistent is this: the attack was violent and personal. Agamemnon fought back, not as a warrior, but as a victim struggling to survive. The water turned red. The room filled with the sounds of chaos, not battle, but panic. There was no honor in this killing, no final speech, no chance to escape. Within moments, the king of Mycenae was dead. Clytemnestra did not flee. She did not hide the body. She did not call it an accident. She stood over him and claimed responsibility. In a shocking move, she declared the murder justified. In her words, this was not a crime, but punishment. Justice for a daughter sacrificed and forgotten. But true crime history does not judge by motive alone. Agamemnon was executed without trial, without defense, inside his own home. And with his death, the bloodshed did not end. It only began. The murder did not remain a secret for long. News spread quickly through the palace. Servants whispered, guards hesitated. No one moved against Clytemnestra. She was calm, controlled, unafraid. Instead of denying the crime, she embraced it. Clytemnestra stood before the people of Mycenae and made a shocking declaration. She claimed Agamemnon's death was justice, not murder. In her mind, the king had paid the price for sacrificing their daughter. This was not remorse. This was justification. Beside her stood Aegisthus, her lover and ally. Together they seized control of the throne. The crime was complete, and the cover-up was political power. There was no investigation, no trial, no punishment. Agamemnon's body became a symbol. Some saw a fallen hero, others saw a deserved execution. The truth was buried beneath fear and authority. But true crime cases rarely end at the first murder. Violence creates consequences, and unfinished business always returns. Far from Mycenae, Agamemnon's son was still alive, and one day he would come back. Years passed, but the crime was never forgotten. Agamemnon's son, Orestes, grew up in exile. He lived with one truth burned into his memory. His father was murdered, and no one was punished. In true crime history, unresolved murders often create new ones. When Orestes returned to Mycenae, he did not come as a grieving child. He came as an avenger. The palace that once belonged to his father was now ruled by the people who killed him. The confrontation was inevitable. Orestes killed Aegisthus first, the man who stood beside his mother after the murder, the man who benefited from Agamemnon's death. Then came the hardest act. Orestes faced his own mother. Clytemnestra pleaded for her life. She reminded him that she had given birth to him, that she was still his mother. But Orestes believed he was delivering justice. He killed her. In one act, the son avenged the father by committing the same crime. Another murder, another bloodstain, another victim. The cycle was complete. But justice was still not satisfied. After the killings, Orestes did not find peace. Instead, he found guilt. Ancient sources describe him as haunted, unable to sleep, constantly looking over his shoulder. In modern terms, this would be called psychological breakdown. In true crime cases, the mind often becomes the final crime scene. Orestes believed he had done what was necessary. He killed his mother to avenge his father. But the weight of that act never left him. He was pursued by the Furies, figures of vengeance and punishment. Whether they were real or imagined, their presence reflects something very real: overwhelming guilt. Eventually, Orestes was brought to trial. The case was unlike any other. A son accused of killing his own mother. The question was not whether he committed the crime. He did. The question was whether it was justified. The court was divided. Some saw a murderer, others saw a victim of a broken system. In the end, Orestes was acquitted, not because he was innocent, but because the cycle of revenge had to end somewhere. Still, no verdict could erase what had been done. 3 murders, 1 family, no true justice. This case has no heroes, only victims. Agamemnon was murdered inside his own home, unarmed, defenseless, betrayed by the person he trusted most. No motive can erase that fact. Clytemnestra believed she was delivering justice for her daughter, but justice without law is not justice at all. It is revenge, and revenge never stops with one body. Orestes killed his own mother to avenge his father. In that moment, the line between victim and killer disappeared. He became part of the same cycle that destroyed his family. 3 murders, 1 household, no true resolution. In modern terms, this would be called a generational crime. Trauma passed down, violence justified by the past, each act defended by the one before it. The house of Atreus did not fall because of gods or fate. It collapsed because no one chose to stop. This is not just an ancient story. It is a true crime case from history, and it proves one thing clearly: when revenge replaces justice, the crime never ends.